Jessica Griffith. This is Heidi, my co-host.
Hello.
And today we have Lorraine Moon, who is one of our counselors and social workers at the agency. And we're so excited to have her because she's amazing. We've heard from all the birth moms. They're like, Lorraine is the best. Lorraine gives me the best advice. Lorraine gives me this. So everyone just absolutely loves you. So
thank you. Yeah.
So let's start why you decided to go into social work.
I went into social work years ago, right out of college, soon after college, not right out of college, but I've always been a child advocate. I've always been an advocate for children. And so my journey in social work has been down those lines. I started in psychiatry and working with children at a children's hospital, which led me, to friends who had adopted children and friends in adoption. And it led me to Active Love. And I started out thinking I was going to help the agency with maybe caring for children periodically and be an advocate for the children. And 22 years later, this is what I'm doing. So I worked with families. I worked with families when I initially started with Active Love. I worked with a lot of adoptive families and slowly transitioned into working with birth parents.
Okay. And is this something that you feel like you were called to do? Like it kind of led you here and you're like, I just love this so much?
I love it. I love the whole family. Let's bring children and families together. I know a lot of people. I don't have anybody in my family, in my immediate family, that have been adopted, but lots of close relatives, friends who I'm aware of adoption. The adoption world, once you're in it, is a world in and of itself.
Oh, totally.
It's massive. And, one of the things I always tell birth parents and adopted families, because you so frequently, sometimes there's every periodically you hear just negative about adoption, or someone who is unhappy, their voice becomes very vocal. And I'm able to, in my mind, I think adoption is it's not a secret, but it's sacred.
Yeah.
And so with that, you adoptees and parents, those that they want to share with and they're close with, of course, it's this marvelous, great story.
Yeah.
But it's not one they're going to put out on NBC and CNN because it's personal.
Yeah.
And this is my family. Now we're talking about people's hearts.
Yeah.
And so, that's a bond that you don't try and publicize because you're nourishing that bond and that love. Great deal of love in adoption. And I love being part of, as small part as it is, seeing those families get put together and watching them grow.
I don't think it's a small part. I think what you do is huge.
Well, I love
you love what you do.
Men that I work with. Right.
Yeah.
Right. I love that piece of the work because ultimately I feel like it's offering the birth parents hope.
Yeah.
It's like and giving them a lifeline to say, there's something great ahead and you can be part of it. And let's talk about it and let's learn about it because this is big.
Yeah.
And you're going to be the catalyst to making this amazing journey into adoption. And let's make it healthy. Let's make it strong. Let's make it steadfast. Let's make it sturdy. And there's tools to do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of birth parents jump on that and they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Well, before I placed, adoption, it's like we knew one family that had adopted all 4 of their kids. And that was kind of it, and my mom was like, what about adoption? And I'm like, I don't even know. Like, sure. But then, I got up here and I was talking to my social worker and we were working through all of our stuff and things like that. So it's the same thing. I was like, oh, I didn't know that, or oh, I didn't know that, or because when you're not in the world of adoption, it's just kind of one of those things. It's such a niche then, and people, unless they need it, they don't
know anything about
anything, and they don't want to know anything about it because they don't need to.
Yeah.
Well, in the olden days, let's talk about the olden days.
Oh, yeah.
And there's plenty of history out there and plenty of books and plenty of stories. Hence, I think that's where the negative in the adoption world came from. Mm-hmm. So if a woman is pregnant and the pregnancy took place in the, and they're in a position where they cannot parent or aren't in a place to give this baby what they feel baby deserves, most of the women I work with could totally parent.
Yeah.
But can they parent in a way like either A, that they were parented, or B, they want this child to be parented.
Yeah.
And they want this child to have more opportunities, more than what they can offer. And they're looking at not just the adoption, because I think that's super tunnel focused, but getting women to look at the great big picture and not just at the 9 months and the trauma that the delivery causes and the placement causes and the grief that comes in, and not focusing just on that solid, that black dot, but focusing on the beauty that surrounds, because it's tough.
Yeah.
There's no easy way around it. I can say to a birth mom all day, there's going to be some pain when you deliver. It's going to, when baby starts putting that pressure,
it's going to hurt.
It's going to be so painful, like something you've never experienced before. And they're like, I know, people have told me. I get it. I know it's going to be painful. Yeah. I'm like, I want to tell you, it's life-changing painful.
Yeah.
I got it. And when that happens, the hormones release, right? And so now you're having this physical pain and this emotional pain that you've never experienced before outside of the adoption.
Yeah.
Now your hormones, because you just are delivered a baby, are floating
in place
everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's like, I get it. I do get it. And then it happens and their eyes are like, oh, you talked about this, but this is way more intense than you talked about. And it's like, because until you're in the middle of it, we don't know.
No.
Right?
I joked with my mom. I had a dream when I was in high school that I got pregnant, and that she, as a punishment, wouldn't let me get an epidural. And so I was like, ha, we're laughing about it or whatever, like, oh, this is never going to happen. And then I get pregnant at 19, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's not going to let me have an epidural. She's going to punish me for this. She didn't. She totally, well, first of all, she wasn't even there. But I got an epidural because I was like feeling pain. I was like, this is awful. Like, this is hard. And I don't want to deal with that.
Right. And then you put hard on top of adoption. Now we got quadruple hard.
Yeah.
I'm just working with a family right now and their birth mom, and they're like, can we actually go to the hospital right now? Can we go? And I'm like, yep, you can totally go to the hospital. Okay. And I said, 10 deep breaths, because ultimately, and I tell birth parents this, I tell adoptive families this, from the time that a gal delivers, and she can't relinquish her parental rights, right?
Yep. No, 24 hours, yeah.
In Utah, it's 24 hours. In other states, every state is different.
Yeah.
Every state is different. Well, I always tell families, that's your labor and delivery. Birth mom has now delivered the baby, and the adoptive family's labor and delivery takes place from the time of that birth till the time that woman can meet with myself or the social worker in their state or the attorney, whichever, every scenario is a little bit different. That's the family's labor and delivery.
Yeah.
And that's intense because they love her.
Yeah.
They love that mama and they love that baby. And those are some intense moments.
So what if a birth mom doesn't want to, like, I didn't want the adoptive parents to be in there. I wanted to do the relinquishment at the agency. So what would you say to the adoptive family? Because I'm sure they would be sad. Or have you had a birth mom be like, I don't want them here until...
Yeah.
Many.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Many birth parents.
And some adoptive families that don't want to come until after.
Well, and periodically families, we would know way in advance
Yeah.
if the family was not interested in being there at the time of delivery and placement. And the family would know way in advance that the birth mother wants them to come after relinquishment has taken place. Ultimately, it's not my suggestion that that's the best way to handle the adoption.
Yeah.
Periodically, it happens because mom may say, that's in my best interest, and what's in her best interest is always the way we go.
Yeah.
But I do see benefit with birth parents meeting the adoptive family and seeing that adoptive family hold baby, love baby, even change babies.
And like make you feel better about
because
like
the
relinquishing
they're
this
gonna
child.
and tears are streaming down mom's face going, oh my gosh,
Oh my gosh.
they
yes.
got this.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, my heart. And the tears are all about mom's heart of joy, of sadness, but going, oh, I did choose the right family. Oh, see, this gets me emotional.
Yeah.
Oh, they are the right ones.
Mm-hmm.
They are going to love her or him or them.
Yeah.
And it helps mom with her grief. Instead of, there's sometimes, they walk away and it's like, I wish I had met the family. I wish I had seen what her wishes are is what's respected.
Yeah.
And the hospital time is, as you know, is the birth mom's time. She gets to tell me exactly what she wants to take place.
Yeah.
She always, through counseling, we have suggestions.
Yeah.
And
you're like, take it for what it is.
Talk about lots of scenarios.
Yeah.
And then I think, mom can make a great decision. And
Well, and I think
it
like
works
20
well.
years ago, I don't know if I could even have that option because mine was semi-closed. So I don't even know if they would have been able to come in due to how the agency was running it.
The hospitals and the agencies were so different even 20 years ago. But most of the hospitals were letting families in to at least discharge the babies and get discharge instructions from
The hospital.
the hospital staff.
Yeah.
But did you meet your adopt by choice?
Well, so I talked to them a few times on the phone at the agency. My caseworker is like, you call them and tell them that you've chosen them. And then when I relinquished him at the agency, I couldn't physically do that. I told my mom or my sister, I said, you need to take him because I don't know if I can put my baby into someone else's arms and then walk away empty handed. That was like too hard for me. And so we didn't, and we weren't, I guess we could have met because I'd seen pictures, but I was having so much pain and grief that I just couldn't fathom seeing him with somebody else, even though I knew it was what was best.
Right. And so that's where mom's wishes are always trump. Whatever mom wants trumps, irregardless of what the family wants. Family probably would have loved to have met you.
Yeah.
And that's a great desire. But guess what? They don't get to make that decision.
Yeah.
They don't get to make the decision, do I get to go to the hospital? And some birth parents are like, I want them in the hospital with me through labor and delivery. I want them to be the piece. I want them to be part of all of this.
Yes, exactly.
I want them to be part of this from square one. I want to shed all my tears with them. I want them to know how much I love them and how hard this is. And in retrospect, how hard it is for the family.
Yeah.
Because then the family turns around and says, I'm taking birth mom's baby.
Yeah.
It's a humbling experience. It's a gift, the greatest gift. And thank you they're obsolete words.
Yeah.
There's no
God's-
emotion that can express the gratitude that
Right.
I would have no children. So it's like, you can't put it into words.
Yeah.
Right.
And
there's a song out there from God's arms to mine, to yours.
I've heard that before.
It's just the most beautiful music that was written specifically, right? A birth mother went to the songwriter.
Oh, yeah. I think I
said-
heard that story.
And there's a whole book that goes along with it.
Oh, that's cool.
And it started with the book, and then the song was written. And it's and there's so much that goes with it, and I love that. And from God's arms to my arms to yours.
Yeah.
Never would, nothing says in there it's going to be easy, or the journey is, it's not rough. I always tell birth parents, you're building a bridge. You decide what your bridge looks like.
Yeah.
You and the family, because how you start building your bridge at the time of placement, you don't know how the end of the bridge is really going to look in 20 years.
Yeah.
You can't, you're just building this bridge as you go, and you're putting in posts and things to make this bridge steadfast and sturdy.
Yeah.
And, part of in counseling, when birth parents come and say, I want to place the baby, the journey being, this is all about placing the baby, right?
Yeah.
And turning mom's heart and mind to saying, the fact that she even reached out to the agency was because she had a desire to see what was available for her baby. And it's what's in the best interest of the child. It's always what's in the best interest for the child. Mm-hmm. You want mom to be healthy and walk through this and be able to be sturdy when all is said and done, because she did for her child the greatest love there is, the greatest act of love that there is, right?
Do you think that, so in society, I feel like we celebrate the families that get these babies. And sometimes birth moms feel like
totally
we're
lost.
Neglect. Like we're this lost.
Totally
piece.
neglect.
Yeah.
So how could you kind of fill the gap or bridge the gap, for lack of better words, and I don't know if it's just the birth mom, how her thought process of just the whole situation, and maybe it's like a trauma response that she's like angry or forgotten, but society doesn't celebrate the moms who got pregnant.
No, well, the thing is how do we celebrate? It's such a hard decision for a birth mom. How do you celebrate her giving her baby up? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm like, how do we do that? I mean, we need to focus more on the birth mom and how she is taken care of after placement. Mm-hmm. I mean, we totally need to do that and not make that piece forgotten, because without that piece, you don't have the end result, the other result on the other side. So I don't know how it's so contrasting. Contrasting things that a family's made, a family's separated.
Yeah. And I don't even know if there's really a right answer. I just,
my answer, I have an answer. Is it the right answer? I doubt it.
Well, you had more experience with birth mothers and stuff.
But ultimately, I think about when the family receives this baby and they're having a baby shower and they're celebrating the baby. They're celebrating this child. They're celebrating the birth of the child. And I know so many families who celebrate that woman in private, and they celebrate her choice and her decision the best they can with her. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's quiet celebrations all around the world that dot the world. Mm-hmm. Do I wish that there was public knowledge? That would be sweet. Just you're going to a group that's having dinner. There's a group getting together on Birthmother's Day. There's on the calendar, the United States calendar, Birthmother's Day.
Yeah, actually exists. Yeah.
Always the day before Mother's Day. Mm-hmm. And I remind, and some birth mothers say, I don't want to be acknowledged on Birthmother's Day.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. There are those people.
There's so many are like, I don't want to be that. And I think that's maybe just due to time and learning.
Yeah.
And so, because the joy that you're celebrating is the life that you gave birth to.
Yeah.
That's the celebration.
Yeah.
And you're celebrating that birthday
of that child.
Their whole life. It's, when we're raising our children, on my child's birthday, I don't celebrate me.
Mm-hmm.
I gave birth to the child, but we celebrate the child.
Yeah.
And we celebrate that amazing child. I think adoptive families, there's so many that do amazing jobs at celebrating the child's birthday and the gift of that birth with mama. But again, I think it's a private family event.
Yeah, kind of going back to your, it's not secret, it's sacred. You know, you don't, like, I didn't share my adoption story with many people at all, especially right after. Now I'm like, let's talk about it. Let's, like, everyone needs to know because it's important. But like back then, it was like, you don't talk about it. You don't say anything. It's kind of shameful.
It is. Yeah, that's how it was talked about. And when the women were sent away to another school or state,
was sent.
Me.
right?
Yeah, but I think your mom, you decided to do that though, not because it was, do you think, because it was a dirty secret?
To hide you?
Or to get you away from the environment?
Were you moved away from mom to hide you?
I think I was.
And that's exactly how it was in the olden days.
Yeah.
Let's move this girl as far away as possible so people don't know
Yeah.
that she's pregnant. And when she comes back, then all
yeah,
will be
they'll
normal.
know. Yeah.
Nothing happened. You never went through anything.
Yeah.
Let it all be forgotten. Sweep it under the rug.
Yeah, you can't do
the
that.
most horrific. Talk about trauma.
Yeah.
Well, that's basically, and I didn't work through any of it.
No.
Yeah.
I just it was like, get a job, keep busy so you don't talk about it, and then
And you think people tell you you're just going to forget it and move on, and it doesn't work out that
well,
way.
they're kind of like, time heals all wounds, and you're
Yeah,
like,
it's like,
okay.
No.
No, what you do with the time during healing
Yeah.
is all that matters.
Well, now I'm starting to heal this now, so I'm like,
yeah.
And
eventually
how old is the little boy you placed?
21.
Yep. So now's a great time to start healing.
He'll be 22. I know. Well,
And see, and that's what I've talked about. I think that the birth moms that we've had on, the ones that have had, I won't say easier, but they've been able to work through it better, is by having counseling throughout the whole process.
And counseling is so
Like
positive.
right after.
And
I
I
know.
And open
do that.
adoptions. I rarely do
Yes.
a closed adoption.
Yes.
Rarely.
oh yeah, see,
And
I
when a
did.
birth mom
Yeah.
says, I want to do a closed adoption, I say, that is great. We can you're in charge.
Yeah.
And you totally get to do what's in your best interest for this child. So let's talk about this and what an open adoption really looks like. You can't say, even when a child's diagnosed with autism, it's like, well, autism's this ginormous spectrum.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
It's the same thing with post-adoption contact. It's
Well,
this-
when you say open,
it's
yes.
this huge,
Yeah.
it's this
Yes.
It's
huge-
whatever you want.
Yes.
It can be like you guys are
It can
doing
be
birthday
similar
parties and
with little-
sleepovers and all
Yeah,
these
birth
things.
mom's
Or
just surprised when I'm like,
Yeah.
you just want an update periodically?
yeah.
It has to be open.
Oh, that's what an open adoption is? I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
The family will just send you an email and update you on how baby's doing and growing. And maybe you'll get a picture of when baby child is 8 years old after
Yeah.
he fell off the slide. It's like, look where we're at.
Yeah.
You know? And you never know what you're going to get, but that's an open adoption. Or,
Well, see, in close, when I used to take the adoptive family line initially in the beginning, I would always tell people, you want to go a little open, because medical information too,
Yeah.
everything is, the door is shut. We can't, if the birth mom called us later on and said, okay, we found out this is running in our family and we think that the adoptive family should know about it, we can't do anything
If it's closed.
if it's closed. There's nothing. I mean, it stops and stays.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean,
So even if you just say, okay, semi-open or a little open, it gives us a door.
yeah. I mean, we
Because
were
it's so broad.
semi-open.
Yeah.
Like I received pictures and letters for the first like 3 years, and then after that it was only letters, and then it kind of tapered off when he was like 5.
Yeah.
But you know,
And two, sometimes that scenario, the extremely open that we've had,
yeah,
doesn't always work. You know, it depends on the people, right? If it's open, you know, I'm sure in yours probably would. But it matters what the adoptive family and the birth mom and how they get together and how comfortable they both are on both sides of it.
to your point, Jess, if somebody came to me, it's like, I really want to have my child, when old enough, to come and spend time with me and the younger sister. And, you know, that's where a whole bunch of counseling comes in.
Yeah.
That's not healthy. That's not healthy. And that's not a family.
no,
And so let's talk about some of that.
yeah,
And let's work around what really are healthy boundaries. And let's see what you're thinking. Because sometimes we get women who think adoption is associated with foster care.
Yeah. And you're like, it's 100% not.
There's a lot of counseling that goes into that adoption is not foster care. It's permanent in nature, and there is no going back.
Yeah.
And sometimes even after that, they still don't seem to understand. I mean,
Well, because foster care, you don't get to choose where you go. Like the birth mother
the baby doesn't.
The birth mother doesn't either. Like because she's had her rights taken away. But in this situation with adoption, it's like the birth mother gets to choose the family. Gets to choose.
And foster care, birth mom's rights aren't taken away.
No.
Just maybe guardianship for a time. They can
prove that they
unless
children in foster care are in there temporarily.
Yeah.
Until parents can figure out what they need to do to bring child back.
Yeah.
Home. And so is foster care the right scenario? Maybe, maybe not. Is guardianship the right scenario? Maybe, maybe not. Is adoption the right scenario? Maybe, maybe not. But that's all that's the options counseling that we always go through.
Yeah.
Tell me about your relationship with your parents, with your mama, with your daddy, with your auntie, with your sisters, that's all part of the intake and the psychosocial history. And you learn about all the options that mom might have prior
to them choosing anybody, right?
Saying, so what brought you and what led you into adoption?
Yeah.
And why do you feel adoption's right for you? Why do you feel like adoption's right for the baby that you're carrying?
Yeah.
I talked to a birth mom this morning, and she says, I am a student at the university. I want to be a mother, but not at this moment.
Yeah.
Dad's at the university. He wants to be a dad, not with me, and neither one of us want this at this moment. And this pregnancy, I'm carrying full term, and this baby will go, I know, to the right home. Yeah. But it's not me, and it's not baby's dad. And we know that.
Yeah.
And so this is absolutely the right thing for this baby. I have to finish my education. Yeah. I have to be able to provide for myself. Yeah. I don't provide for myself as it is.
Yeah.
I can barely stand on my own 2 feet, working my 12 hours a week.
Yeah.
It's a tough scenario.
Well, do you think, I lost my train of thought.
It's okay.
Wow. Okay. I'll go to another point. So have you ever had, I know you've had birth mothers that have said, I'm in a place, and they're like, and then they just like ghost you.
Yep. Just happened this week.
What happens like in that situation? You just kind of let them reach out if they decide, or
birth mom has the right, birth parents have the right up until they sign a consent document. They change their mind at any time they want to change their mind. When we get further along in the adoption process, from the time an application happens through counseling, through the time that birth mom maybe shares and is matched with a family, hopefully we're on the journey for placement, right? Because then now you're talking about birth mom and baby.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about an adoptive family who, and let's not forget what an adoptive family has been through by the time they have the privilege to adopt, right? They have been through so much, and the losses they have suffered.
Oh, I'm sure.
So many families have suffered stillborn babies. They've suffered miscarriage, and then another miscarriage, and then another D&C. And then they think, oh, I'm going to carry the baby, and they carry the baby clear to 22 weeks. And then they lose the baby.
Yeah.
And there's so many families come to us with great loss, and so many families come to us and they know right up front when they get married, we're not going to physically ourselves be able to have children. So then they try in vitro, and they try different means to bring a baby into their life. So we have a lot of families who have done a lot of things trying, and we have a lot of birth parents who are parenting themselves 2 or 3 children, and it's like, oh, I need to share the love.
Yes.
I can't do this.
Well, raising kids is hard, and it's expensive.
Parenting is hard.
Yes.
And so birth parents who frequently, when a birth parent ends up, God, I wish they'd call and say, and we have some that call and say, my sister didn't think I was serious, and now she's taking the baby. And it's like, man, I wish that would have happened,
a while ago.
3 months ago.
Yeah.
So grateful it didn't happen in the hospital.
Yeah.
So grateful baby wasn't born and family flew in from whatever state or whatever country they're living in.
But we've had that happen.
And for sure we've had that happen. But hopefully we just do enough counseling that I'm always the last end piece of my conversation with every birth parent. How are you feeling about your adoption plan? Are you feeling confident? If you feel like there's something that's come up that you feel like you want to change your mind, now's a good time. Not when, because you know who Jack and Jill are, right? Mm-hmm. And when you guys get together, if something were to change, then there's just a lot of pain with you and with the family. The heart is so broken. For a lot of families, when that happens, that ends their adoption journey.
Yeah.
You know, it could end it emotionally, it could end it physically, it could end it financially.
Yeah, it's really not.
Because families put their whole life into
I know, their savings and
this birth parent that they trust and they fall in love with.
Yeah.
And they care for so deeply.
My husband, we had one fall through.
Okay.
And she actually lived with my parents, and we take her to her appointments and everything. And she ended up having the baby, not telling us, naming the baby the same name we told her we were going to name the baby.
Oh.
And never talked to us again. She had her family move her out and everything. So after that, my husband's like, I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And so he goes, I'll do it, but I'm not going to. I was by myself in the journey as far as.
He's like, I'm out. Like, emotionally, I just got to check myself out.
Yeah. He goes, I prefer closed, and I don't want to do any of the paperwork or anything. So in that whole step, and it's happened quite often.
Yeah.
I was doing it on my own. But I got Kendra, my second. So we got Alyssa and then my second. And so our first was closed. But then with Kendra, since they're biological siblings, that one was open. And so it gave me a door in.
You're like, okay, I'm going to kick this door down.
I have a door in. And then with Christopher, our third one, for Janet, we saw him born. So
it's kind of evolved over time, which it, I mean, it normally does. Obviously, it's evolved over the last 20 years. But I know, so when I was living, because I lived with a substitute family in Midvale, and they were on the list to adopt. He had been married before. He had a son from that previous marriage, but they were trying all the time. Well, I was about 8 months pregnant, and she got pregnant. And it was so exciting for them, right? But then she miscarried.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was so devastated for her. And I knew that it wasn't about me. She wasn't mad at me, but I could see and hear the resentment in her voice.
It's just painful.
I know it's so painful. So I actually moved out because I was like, they need to grieve together. They don't want me walking around 8 months pregnant and not wanting to be pregnant. You know what I mean? So, but I'm like, firsthand with them is really the first experience I had with an adoptive family, and kind of the journey and the emotional journey and the hurt and all the stuff. And it broke my heart, because I'm like, I don't have a problem getting pregnant, and these poor people they just want a baby so bad, I was like, I'll give you mine, but I couldn't at the time.
Yeah.
But and then I had friends who actually adopted through the agency. And just her, they're in vitro, and then they did the IUIs. They did 2 or 3 of those.
Yep.
Didn't work.
Yep.
Then they did in vitro, which she's like, we're basically spending all this money in hopes to get a baby, but you don't know. They didn't get a baby. And then the doctor was like, you basically have eggs of an 80-year-old. And she's like, cool.
An 80-year-old?
Yeah. I mean, she had no eggs.
Right.
And so they adopted their first daughter, and I'm not
And she got pregnant.
Then she got pregnant.
Yeah, that's something.
And carried it to term.
Yeah.
And they have a little boy now.
But see, in some of those cases, I feel like that's God saying, okay, well, this baby's supposed to be in your family.
Yeah.
Just coming a different way.
Different way, exactly.
And then they get pregnant. I mean, it didn't work for me, but.
Well, so many families. I talk to birth parents all the time who, when I say, tell me, how many sisters do you have? How many brothers do you have? When I'm doing a little geogram and doing a family tree. And they'll say, well, I have this. They'll tell me I have 3 sisters. I have 7 brothers. I have, my mom has 6 sisters. And I'm like, wow, you come from a big family. And I'm charting it. I'm doing my family tree. And where does this come? So this is your mom's sister. This is your dad's brother. Well, they're not really my brother, and they're not really their brother or sister, but they always have been. So I just call them auntie because they're my mom's
like best friend or something. Yeah.
And that's how families are made all over the world.
Yeah.
Oh, we have aunts and uncles that are biologically related to
and
us.
So my point being, families are just made.
Yeah.
How families are made by love, irregardless
of how it gets
the biological blood and how that child becomes bonded to that family.
Yeah.
I had a best friend, I still do, for years. We raised our children together, and they were always together, and we were always to events together. And our children were teenagers when I think one of my children said, well, that's my cousin. And I'm like, well, biologically, she's not your cousin. Mm-hmm. I mean, biologically, she's just my friend's daughter.
Yeah.
And my kids were like,
wait a minute.
What?
That doesn't make any sense.
We're not cousins? It's like, oh, no.
You spend so much time together.
My whole life, I thought we were cousins. But
that's good.
My point of bringing that up is just because that's how bonds are made and love is made. And I think that's the same way, depending upon what birth parents want and adopted families want, they make that same bond with each other.
Yeah.
They slowly integrate, start building that bridge, and pretty soon, that bridge just becomes bigger and better and greater. Yeah. And it's just perfect for what they need.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And perfect for that child. The whole reason there's open adoption is for the child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not so these parents can become best friends. Yeah. It's because what is going to be in the best interest of that child as that child grows up. Yeah. There's too many studies. There's too many books going back to 20 years ago, to 40 years ago, going back to the orphan trains, right? That is not the best way to place a child in a home and walk away from the child. So they have no answers about their heritage and about their roots and about where they come from. Because all that does when a child becomes inquisitive is start asking unanswered questions. And mom and dad, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But now in open adoption, mom and dad go, I don't know. Let's call her. Let's email. Let's text. Let's find out. And that kiddo's like, great. Let's find out.
Yeah.
I have a lot of families who birth mom's picture is just sitting right up there in that child's bedroom and has been since the day the child was born. Mm-hmm. Because of her, we have you.
Yeah.
Because of her, we get to do this.
Yeah.
Because of her, and she gets, when you're talking about celebrating birth mom,
in those private moments,
she's celebrated all the time.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's like we've talked about, it's different now. Because I think if it was, and I think a lot of the people who are feeling maybe forgotten or just not celebrated, maybe they've had a negative experience with adoption. Maybe they've had no counseling. Maybe they've had, so they just are like, well, what about me? Like I'm so broken. I'm lost. I don't know what to do, where to turn. I have no family, all these negative thoughts, because I think as humans, we we gravitate towards negative thinking. It's a lot harder to be positive. Well, not.
Well, if you're hurt. Well, the thing is, I think it's just based on hurt, right? Yeah. I mean, it's just a building block, and then adds more and more. So then you're going to get very negative if you don't heal.
Well, and if you focus on the negative, you're going to see the negative.
Yes, always.
Go back to the black dot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. We all have black dots in our life, but there was one time I read a little article, and it was shown on a big screen, and a professor gave a test to their students, and on that piece of paper was a black dot. And so you had an 8x10 piece of paper with a little black dot on the piece of paper. And the professor said to the students, this is your test today, and I want you to turn the paper over and tell me what you saw on the paper. And the students did. And then they handed in the paper. And the professor proceeded to read the students' answers to what they saw in the paper. And he started reading and they were all said in different ways.
Yeah.
But every student talked about, with the exception of one student, they all talked about the black dot. The black dot in your life, the black dot on the paper, the black dot was in the right corner. The black dot wasn't centered. The black dot was small. The black dot wasn't very big. The black dot, everything, the black dot, the black dot, the black dot. Nobody, one student, wrote about the white piece of paper and all the space around the white piece of paper. And then the professor started his lesson saying, this is our lives, folks. We all have a black dot. Mm-hmm. We can choose to focus on everything around us.
Yeah.
Or focus on the
black dot.
Yeah.
And the black dot is in our life. We want it to shrink. Then let's take care of what's caused the black dot.
Yeah.
Let's start getting some help and using our time wisely and getting some counseling or getting on medication or doing therapy. And the other thing that I think is super important to even with birth parents, and birth parents who have other children know this, birth parents who are placing a baby and are not parents, but ultimately good things happen in adoption and good things happen with biological children.
Oh, yeah.
Bad things happen to good people. Bad things happen to good families. Bad things happen in life.
To everyone.
Yeah.
To all of us. And so then birth mom places with a family, and then 12 years later, parents divorce. And it's like, oh, that's my fault. I should never have placed with them. I should never have done this. I should never have done that. Well, in real life, guess what?
That happens.
People divorce.
Yeah.
Guess what? Children are diagnosed with ADD, right? Yeah. It has nothing to do with
the adoption.
No. Right.
But people, I think sometimes, especially birth parents, I mean, obviously I'm just speaking for myself, if they have a negative experience or they're still grieving, they want to blame someone.
Yes. Sure.
So it's like, oh, well, it was their fault. Like, if they would have been with me, they would have been fine, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but they would have had another struggle with you.
Sure.
Because everyone has struggles.
And it's different.
We all do that. We
like
all
the coulda, shoulda, woulda.
We all do, we do the blame game.
Yeah.
The second car hits the first car at a red light. And the second car's like, I thought you were going. Why didn't you go? That was, it was clearly yellow. You could have gone through that yellow light.
Yeah.
And you stopped. Why did you stop? Instead of the person going,
I'm sorry.
I was following too close. I should have prepared to stop and taken responsibility for, I should have
the mistake that they
right?
made. Yeah.
Well, and
we always are looking for people to blame for something that's not cool.
Of course. And I told, recently I told my mom, because we've talked about the whole adoption thing. And she's like, I know you were really angry with me right after the adoption. And I said, well, it wasn't because I didn't love you. I said, but you were the closest person to me and the easiest person to blame. Because I didn't want to be mad at myself because I was hurting. I was too sad. And I didn't know if I could handle the emotion of the anger on myself.
Right.
So you got it. And I wasn't ever mean to her. It wasn't like I was, jumping down her throat, but I just was constantly and even a year after, I was like, it was like, you made me do it.
And sometimes birth parents will say, Lorraine, why didn't you stop that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not what you wanted at the time.
Yeah.
And so people blame, it's a talent to not play the blame game.
Yeah.
It's something you have to work for.
Because it's easier to play the blame game.
Oh, easy. And in life, naturally, it's a talent to take responsibility for all your actions, to take responsibility. There's adoption, there's pregnancies that take place from rape, from incest. We've worked with all those young girls and those women, just heartbreaking situations. A lot of women saying, I certainly let my guard down.
Yeah.
Take full responsibility, but it's not the child's responsibility.
Oh, totally.
And we have a lot of dads who say, do what you need to do.
Yeah.
Man, we let our guard down. But let's find the best home for this baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's find the very best home. I can't parent. You can't parent. And for sure, that's something that takes place during counseling before an adoption ever happens.
So when you're doing the counseling with the birth parents, like my caseworker did like single parent, parent with the father, and then adoption. Is that like, do you do like, what do you, when you're talking about the choices?
Probably in a roundabout way for sure, because you're saying, what's your relationship with birth father?
Yeah.
How involved is he in your day-to-day life? What is your correspondence with him? How long have you known him? Do you want to try and co-parent? Do you want to parent together? Is marriage on the horizon?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we investigate all of that.
All of the possibilities.
Sure. And all of it because there's a lot of great single moms.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of great single dads.
Yeah.
And, families are made just like we're talking about.
Yeah.
From single moms, single dads, same-sex dads, same-sex moms, every scenario you can imagine. Grandparenting. Now grandparents are parents, right? Is that ideal? Maybe in some families it is for that family because that's what works for them. And so whatever is right in a family is just like, I think any birth parent's heart's going to let them know. And to what we said earlier, periodically a birth parent will change their mind because their heart is just too heavy to move forward. And that's their answer. Yeah. It's too much. Then let's not move forward.
Yeah.
This child is not coming to bring more grief and pain so that you cannot function.
Yeah.
Then absolutely there's resources out there to parent. Yeah. Right? Are they the resources you want? Maybe, maybe not. But for sure, and I talk about that all the time. There's for sure state resources out there to help women parent. Are they great? They're satisfactory, in my opinion, but at least can help
give you that
women
option.
Get going.
Yeah,
and the goal would be that they'll get stronger and better by themselves. But
it is hard because I do think the state assistance sometimes tries to keep you in that, like not on purpose. I think it's like, because they're like, you have to make this amount of money, but it's like, if you make 1% over, so then
you lose this.
And so sometimes I had a girl I worked with who quit the job because she said, actually, I make more money staying home.
Yeah, because they punish you for it, making the money.
From the state.
Yeah.
And the state is aware of that.
Yeah.
And, families become codependent on the state. I have a lot of women who say, I'm breaking out of that.
Yeah.
I'm breaking out of that gutter.
Yeah.
My mom raised me on state assistance. Her mother raised her on state assistance.
Like, I'm not going to.
And I'm breaking that mold.
Yeah.
That mold. I want out.
Yeah.
And I don't want to raise my child on state assistance.
Yeah.
And I've been making it so far, and I'm not going down that path.
Yeah.
And so it depends on, and some women are fine with state assistance. They know no different. And it works for them.
And you know what? And honestly, it's a great resource to have. Like we've been, me and my husband have been on it, a couple of times, but we were like, okay, we are going to work really hard to get off of it because this is temporary and we don't want to stay in this cycle.
And that's what the state assistance program
is supposed to do.
Meant to do.
Yeah.
Help anybody, anytime, whenever. Temporary.
Yeah. It's not a
temporary. It was never set up to be a lifelong.
Yeah. And I think that's, when you're raised in it, it's kind of just like your mom did, your mom's mom did. And so you're like, this is all I've known. So this is kind of what we do.
Yeah.
Right.
So you don't know any different.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a normal thing.
Exactly. So, I don't know.
Well, when we needed help, we went to the church.
Oh, well, we did that.
Because you can go to the store.
Oh, yeah, we went to the store, yeah.
And then they can help with bills periodically.
Yeah,
and
but temporarily.
When my husband didn't have a job for a year and a half.
I know, when my husband didn't have a job for a year. I think everyone's husband has not had a job or wife, periodically. Because hard stuff and bad things happen to good people.
Yeah. Because hard things happen.
Yeah.
And people get laid off and people lose their jobs and you think you're cruising around in life and you think, oh, I've got it made. I'm 50 years old. I've done this for so long. This is what I'm going to do till I can stop.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you get sideswiped, and it's like, oh, didn't see that coming.
You never do.
Right?
You
And
don't.
that's a lot of birth parents.
Yeah.
You know, they're making it, they're working, they're raising their children, or they're going to school, and they're making it, right? And then they get sideswiped, and they're like, oh,
Like, this is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right, wasn't planning on this, wasn't planning on this.
Yeah. Totally.
And adoption is a great option
Yes.
in so many ways.
Yeah.
It could be the perfect answer, but it's not always the right option.
Yeah.
It's just a great option if it works for you.
Yeah. I mean, I've even told my mom, I'm like, I think if I would have been given, like really been given the choice to place, I still would have chosen that, because he was able to go and live with this family, have siblings, and, you know, just have really great life experiences. These parents that love, and I placed him with a biracial family on purpose so that because he's biracial, so that he could have his dad and kind of part of that heritage, and his mom. And I mean, I think we talk all the time, and he's just he's just a happy kid. And I've even asked him, like,
He seems very well adjusted.
yeah, he's super well adjusted.
Yeah.
It's like, he's like, oh, I've never thought about that. Or, oh yeah, that's never bothered me. Or, you know, which then also solidifies my decision.
You brought up you bring up a great response, because in counseling, we'll talk about that. It was a hard decision.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you didn't even want to, you couldn't even meet family. The pain was so intense, and your heart was, you thought it was going to jump out of your skin. It's like,
Yes.
how do you have a heart attack? I think I'm having it.
Like,
right.
I just wanted to melt into nothingness and just be done.
I think that's happening. And then moving through the grief and the pain and the sorrow and the trauma. But what you just said, but there was no regret.
Yeah.
And that's a key word. And I use that a lot in counseling too. Regret is hard to heal from.
Yes.
Healing can take place through grief and trauma and sadness and depression. There is healing in all those. There's healing in all those aspects. Really, a little bit tougher to heal through regret.
Yeah.
No birth parent wants to walk through an adoption and live in regret. And I think there's a lot of women that I've worked with, so many, that have addiction problems. And it's either place the baby for adoption, where you get some choices and that woman gets to make some choices for that baby, or work with the state.
Yeah.
But it's filled with regret.
Yep.
It's filled with regret at herself for the addiction or the problem, that she feels forced. She has to let go of her baby.
Yeah.
She would never let go of her baby if it weren't for the addiction problems.
Yeah.
And she has options to get recovery, to get better, to get stronger, and work with the state.
Yeah.
Adoption is just one of those other options. Sometimes, there's regret in that.
Yeah.
Because birth parents come to me in numerous occasions just broken, and there's regret from circumstances of life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Unassociated with the pregnancy.
Well, I think it kind of ebbs, like my journey with adoption has kind of ebbed and flowed. There's been times that I'm fine. There's other times that I'm like kind of sitting in that.
And I wonder if that's because of healing. Because you've never taken the time to actually heal yourself.
So but it's like it's a journey, and I feel like it's a kind of a lifetime journey. You get armed with these tools, and you have to remember to use these tools when whatever happens, or whenever you get triggered. And
it's super easy to sweep things under the rug. Lift it up and sweep it out of there and stomp it down.
Well, of course, we were talking about this in the podcast before, how we as people like to be comfortable. We don't like to be uncomfortable. It's scary. And there's like, happiness in the comfortability, but there's not happiness, because you don't change, you don't heal, you don't move on. You kind of just stay in this, you're stuck.
Yeah. You're happy in your miserable state.
Exactly. Because you don't want to be uncomfortable.
I have an acquaintance who's been in therapy for a little while, for a variety of reasons, a grown woman. And she went to therapy, and I was asking her, how did therapy go? what did you learn today? What was shared today? She says, an interesting thing was said today. And I went into the therapist and thought, I wonder what she's going to share with me today. And I started sharing all my woes, all my stuff, and things that are so hard and things that are causing me, to weigh me down. And the therapist looked me straight in the eye and she said, what tools have you used? Mm-hmm. We've been doing this a long time. What tools have you used that we've talked about in this past, for the past 10 days?
That could have helped you.
And she sat there, and there was a silent moment.
Yeah.
The therapist said, if you're not using your tools, it's a waste of time to be here.
Yeah.
We've talked and talked and talked.
Like, we can't talk anymore unless you're going to use these tools.
So we could be talking today about the tools and how they worked for you. Mm-hmm. Did that work? Let's tweak it. Let's adjust it. But if you're not using the tools, when you want to use the tools, we have so much work we can do.
Yes.
Well, it's kind of like leading a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink.
As long as the toolbox is shut.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's not going to help anybody.
And I have a lot of women come back and go, Lorraine, I'm so sad. I'm so this. I'm so this. Tell me what you did. Did you do? And I'll list the things that I've asked.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. Maybe it's as simple as, I want you to go outside for 10 minutes and just get sunshine.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I could not do it. How much water did you drink? I did have a drink of water. I remember how many we were talking about water, how important this is. Simple things, and it's so tough. And so some of those tools of talking here, then I'll know, let's go back to your doctor. Let's see your doctor.
Yeah.
That's the last tool in the box if we can't even pick up the other tools.
Yeah. Well, see, and what's sad is I was thinking, because my daughter was battling depression, and I've been with her to help her get through it. The women, a lot of the women that we have come through us don't have that support. And I just can imagine how difficult that is, watching my daughter. I mean, the steps and how far down she went. And if I wasn't there constantly trying to lead her through it, I can't imagine being in that if she was there by herself with nothing and no help.
Well,
it would be hard. I mean,
well, the people with no help, they're in a constant state of fight or flight, and you're just surviving, and you can't do anything else but survive.
Yeah, you can't do anything. I mean, she was in a place where she didn't want to do anything. She wasn't eating. She lost like 15, 20 pounds. It was bad.
Yeah, because eating is like an extra task.
Yes.
Like just walking to the kitchen, you're like, that takes too much work.
Going outside and getting sunshine.
It takes too much work. Or for me, it's like calling my doctor. I was like, I can't do it. My friend was like, do I need to call and make an appointment for you? I was like, probably, because I won't do it.
Yeah. Well, and I bought her one of those sun boxes and everything. Because she wouldn't go outside. No, so I got her one of those sun lamps and everything. I've done it all. So
I wish, it breaks my heart that not everyone has.
And I'm glad they have you. That's what I was thinking. And to even talk to them and say, go get water. Did you go outside? I mean,
just to check on them.
Yeah. And in our agency, they have me, they have their case managers, they have their coordinators.
Yes.
We provide so much support. When I go through some of the things at our agency, some of the reports that birth parents leave us.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's such a team effort. And when that gal can leave wholeheartedly after, working with our entire team, it's just a huge benefit to getting out of the starting gates.
Yeah.
That team support. Because that's like, holy cow, now I can go and keep working.
Yeah.
For sure.
I wish that.
Yeah, and we have the birth moms that still continue to reach out to those support systems, the caseworkers, and you.
For sure.
For after placement when they're down in those moments.
Well, I had a birth mom reach out to me and be like, look at what my boyfriend did. It, like, her talking about it and us being like, what? Me and Jessica were like, what are you, why are you still there? Like, we're having this conversation. And
why are you still with that boyfriend?
Well, and it got her to leave him. Like, she was like, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm better than that. Like, and I'm like, you are better than that.
Mm-hmm.
And so she, like, between me and Jessica, we kind of were like, yeah, you can get your life together. And I did tell her this. I said, look, I know you want to change your life. And sometimes that whole thing looks really daunting, right?
And scary.
And
yes.
scary. I said, pick one thing a day or even a week that you're going to change, a small thing about your daily activities. It doesn't matter what, like waking up 15 minutes early.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, as you continue to do that with new things every couple weeks or whatever, you'll slowly start to see a change and it won't seem as daunting to you.
Right.
And she's like, oh, okay. Like, okay, I'll try that.
Instead of looking at the whole picture.
Yes, the whole picture is overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's way too ginormous.
Yeah, and I just check out. Like, when I see the whole picture, like, if I have to clean my whole house, I'm like, so I'm just going to take a nap.
Yeah.
That sounds way better.
Why should they even try?
Yeah, exactly. My kids are just going to explode everywhere. But,
Right.
well, Lorraine, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And we enjoyed chatting with you, and
It's great. Thank you.
you do such great work.
Yeah.
All the birth mothers love you, and all the staff love you. So
Appreciate your positive comments. Thank you.
thank you for listening to Active Love Adoptions podcast. If you or someone you know is thinking of adoption, please visit our website at aactivelove.com.
ActiveLoveAdoptions.com.
Active crap.
Yeah,
We'll
do
start
that
over. Crap.
It's okay.
Thank you for listening to Active Love Adoptions.
It's a good thing I can edit.
Oh my gosh. This hasn't happened for a while.
No, it hasn't.
Like the first couple times I was like,
fine.
blah. Thank you for listening to Active Love Adoptions. If you or someone you know is thinking of adoption, please reach out to us at aactiveloveadoptions.com.